You don't have to be some super brave revolutionary to bring down the system. All you have to do is not have kids. Nothing strikes fear in the heart of the capitalist system quite like declining fertility rates. That's why you see Elon Musk, the Pope, the CEO class, world governments all screaming about having babies, because if you don't, you will crash their economies and their party will come to an end. See, what happens if you stop having children is there are less people to enter the workforce. And when there's less people to enter the workforce, labor costs more. That's right. That means you get to get paid more. Also, countries become old on average, and that takes a lot of money to maintain. There are less taxes for them to collect. There are less profits for them to rake in when there are less workers to exploit. So if you're like me and you've taken the last 20 years pretty personally and you'd love nothing more than to see this system come crashing to the ground, even if it is at your own expense, just become a dink. Dual income, no kids. Be selfish, as the Pope says. Don't have kids, and this thing will burn to the fucking ground.
Go back and watch, the OP's, everything that person has to say. I just wanted to add a couple things. You should have a kid if you want to have a kid. If you don't want to have a kid, don't have a kid. That's one thing. The other is no kids, no future. No kids, no voters. No kids, no continued class solidarity in the classes that are oppressed. No kids from marginalized folks expedites the erasure that the Muskis of the world are looking for. You're correct about labor. There are other ways of withholding labor than not creating a future. Not having children means not having a future. Please sit with that.
You don't have to. You don't have to have kids. Kids are not necessary. They're not necessary to your survival. They're not necessary for anything. You don't have to have kids. Other people can have kids, and those kids will then need work. And as a person that is getting older, you're going to need help. So, if you're a person that doesn't have kids, but you have money, you can hire the people's kids to take care of you. Like what normally happens whenever you get old. Even if you have your own kids, that doesn't necessarily mean that those kids are going to take care of you in your old age. That doesn't even mean that those kids are going to be living in the same state as you when you get older. Yeah. Think about that. Double income, no kids. Get your tooth removed.
In The Guardian today, the Pope has called couples who choose pets over having children selfish because it diminishes people and takes away their humanity. You know what will actually diminish humanity? Climate change. Having to live in a house share at the age of 42 because wages haven't kept up with housing prices. He's obviously never been on dating apps because that takes away your humanity. Go on the Central Line at rush hour. All humanity lost. When do we get to vote this guy out?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into a bold statement that has been making waves. You don't have to be a brave revolutionary to bring down the system. All you have to do is not to have kids. That's right, one simple choice could challenge the very foundation of capitalism. So let's get started with it.
A lot of people don't want to have kids because they don't want to have to sacrifice their own happiness and their own pleasure for somebody else. And I think that's admirable that you know that about yourself, because a lot of people are going to be like, you're so selfish. But it's like, yeah, I know I'm selfish. I know I'm selfish, and therefore I don't want to have to add anybody into this space that I might end up abusing because I'm selfish, because I'm weird. And sometimes I watch things that remind me of a Saturday morning on Lifetime. I was watching Mama Flora's Family, the miniseries, and it perfectly illustrated why a lot of people don't want to have kids. Because there was a scene where a mama played by Erica Alexander was sitting at a table with her two kids, and her daughter just finished her chicken, and she put up the bone and she said, "Can I have another?" And Erica Alexander was about to take a bite of her chicken, and she looked at her daughter and then she handed her her piece of chicken. And I know some of you are not going to be able to do that. She didn't have enough money. She didn't have enough food. Her child was hungry, and she fed her child her food. Now, some of y'all would have had children starving because you would have been like, I got to eat too. And some of y'all would say you need to be grateful for the little that we do have while you eat your chicken in front of your child. But some people have the heart of being a parent that would give their child their chicken. They just don't want to give that child that chicken, so that's why they're not having a child. People want to feel comfortable that they are going to be able to reliably feed themselves and their children because they do not want to have a hungry child. And if their child is fed, they want to make sure they can eat too.
I think it's really strange to paint people who are child-free or wish to be child-free as the ones who don't like or hate children, where I'll take it a step further and say it's completely weaponized and manipulated, where the people who have children, I'd argue a lot of them don't like their children, did not want children, did not plan for children, are the ones actively neglecting and abusing children. Our systems at large, our education system, our government, our current economic model are the ones exploiting children. Like, I think the narrative of like, oh, people who don't want kids, don't like kids, even say go as far as hate kids, those are not the issues here. Like on like the wickedness and evil and like aggression towards children, they've removed themselves from that whole dynamic. They don't want them, they don't want to be around them, so on and so forth. So it's, how is abuse happening to children? It is by the hands of people who wanted kids, who like kids. It's like this weird weaponization within like the conservative movement of like, oh, like save the children. It's like, you're the same ones that don't care about the children. You're the same ones that believe in corporal punishment, the ones that want to bring religion back into the schools and like hitting kids back in the schools. Like, it's so flipped on its head that people saying like, oh, if you don't have kids, like you have no right to talk about kids. It's no, I have the perfect right to talk about children because I've looked at the situation around me. I've looked at the environment. I've looked at how people act, how people treat not only me, but other children. I made the decision to not want to bring life into said situation. And you all didn't look around, didn't see that, didn't analyze that, didn't digest that, and still brought people into this mess. And then go, well, why is all this bad stuff happening to children? You didn't think about it beforehand. And like the people that did think about it, people that did do the analysis and came to the conclusion of not to do that, it's like, if anything, those are the ones trying to protect children and like the class of children.
Alright, let's take a moment to reflect on a topic that is both personal and profoundly political: the choice not to have kids. It's a decision that surprisingly has far-reaching consequences for our global economy and society. And the funny thing is, you don't need to be a rebel or a revolutionary to make a statement. Just the act of deciding not to have children can send shockwaves through the system. Let's break this down. Why do you think people like Elon Musk, the Pope, and CEOs from across the world are so obsessed with population growth? Why do they constantly harp on the idea of having more babies? Is it because they genuinely care about your happiness, your legacy, or the joys of parenting, or could there be something more self-serving at play? At its core, the capitalist system is like a giant machine that runs on one thing: growth. To sustain growth, you need workers to produce, consumers to spend, and taxpayers to fund the infrastructure. The more people you have, the more the machine strives. But what happens when people stop playing along? What happens when fertility rates drop? The answer is simple: the machine starts to break down. Let's talk about labor. One of the most fundamental aspects of capitalism is the workforce. Capitalism relies on a surplus of workers to keep wages low and profits high. It's basic supply and demand. The more workers they are competing for jobs, the less companies have to pay. But when fertility rates decline, fewer people enter the workforce. Suddenly, companies have to fight for labor and wages go up. This is terrifying for corporations because higher wages mean lower profits. And let's be honest, capitalism isn't designed to share wealth equitably. It's designed to minimize profits from those at the top. So when labor becomes scarce, the entire system feels the squeeze. Now, let's move on to demographics. When birth rates decline, populations start to age. This creates a host of challenges for governments and economies. Older populations require more healthcare, pensions, and social support. Who pays for that typically is the younger, working population through taxes. But if there hasn't enough young people, that burden grows heavier for everyone. Governments then face a dilemma. They can either increase taxes on the remaining workforce, which nobody likes, or cut back on services for the elderly, which is equally unpopular. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation that destabilizes the system. And let's not forget about consumer spending. Young people are the biggest drivers of economic growth. They buy homes, cars, and baby products. They take out loans, invest in education, and fuel industries. When there are fewer younger people, demand drops, and when demand drops, businesses suffer. So when someone like Elon Musk tweets about the dangers of population decline, he's not worried about humanity's future in some noble, altruistic sense. He's worried about the future of his companies and the capitalist system that made him a billionaire. Similarly, when the Pope calls people who patronize pets over children selfish, he's not just lamenting a cultural shift, he's worried about the church losing its influence and its flock. The Pope's comments about selfishness struck a chord with people, didn't they? Some were offended, others laughed it off, but let's unpack that. Why is choosing not to have kids considered selfish? Isn't it selfish for the system to expect people to sacrifice their personal well-being, financial security, and mental health to keep machine running? Think about the cost of raising a child in today's world. Housing prices are through the roof, healthcare is a nightmare, education costs are skyrocketing, and let's not even get started on climate change and the state of the planet. For many people, the choice to have kids isn't just a personal decision, it's an economic one. And yet, when people make the rational decision not to have kids, they are vilified. They are called selfish or lazy. But what is really selfish is a system that demands infinity growth on an infinity planet, all while ignoring the real challenges that ordinary people face every day. Here is the irony. By choosing not to have kids, you are actually wielding a form of white power. Declining birth rates force the system to adapt. They challenge the status quo. They make governments and corporations rethink how they operate. And that is why the elites are so scared. Let's talk about the Pope's comments a little more, because they spark a lot of reactions. When he said that couples who choose pets over children are selfish, people were quick to clap back. They pointed out the hypocrisy of being lectured by someone who leads one of the richest institutions in the world. Some said, sure, I would take being selfish with my dog over struggling to raise a kid in this broken system. Others asked, if the church cares so much about children, why not do more to address poverty and inequality? The backlash was immediate and fierce because people are tired of being guilt-tripped into choices that they don't serve them. They are tired of being told they are selfish for prioritizing their own well-being in a world that often feels hostile to families. Now, I'm not saying that having kids is a bad choice. For many people, it's a source of joy, meaning, and fulfillment. But the point is that it should be a choice, not an expectation, not an obligation, and certainly not a requirement to keep the system afloat. What I find fascinating is how much fear this topic generates among the elites. They know that declining birth rates could lead to higher wages, better working conditions, and shifts in the power dynamics. They know that a smaller, older population could force a reckoning with capitalism, unsustainable demands for growth, and that is why they are so desperate to convince you to have kids. They frame it as a moral imperative, a duty to society, or even an act of patriotism. But let's be real, their motives are anything but selfless. So where does this leave us? Well, if you are someone who is tired of the system as it is, if you have felt powerless to change it, here is something to consider. You have more power than you think. Every personal choice you make sends ripples through the system, and sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to step back and say no. No to the guilt, no to the pressure, no to the expectation that your life should revolve around keeping the system running. Instead, patronize yourself, build a life that makes you happy. If that includes kids, great. If it doesn't, that is great too. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that the choice is yours. And for those who say, but what about the future? What about humanity? Let me ask you this. What kind of future are we building if it requires people to sacrifice their happiness and security for the sake of the system? Maybe it's time to rethink what progress really means. So the next time someone like Elon Musk or the Pope tells you to have kids, remember this. Their concern isn't about you. It's about the system they benefit from. And if you decide not to play their game, well, that is your quiet revolution. Thank you for watching. and let's continue this conversation in the comments below. Let's share our thoughts and perspectives with one another. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on this story and more. I will see you in the next video.